My name is Leslie Coleman, and I am a 42-year-old theology professor from Minnesota. What I'm about to share with you is my near-death experience testimony of what happened when Jesus showed me the shocking truth about the 6 most popular Christian traditions of demonic origin. I truly saw how Satan has infiltrated Christian traditions over the centuries, deceiving even the most devoted believers, and I'm afraid that this NDE testimony will shake the foundations of what many Christians believe. But before we start, please let me know where you're listening from. It will be nice to feel closer even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other on this channel. Enjoy listening. This began on October 12, 2016. I was doing my usual run, praying and thinking about the lecture I would give later that day on church history. The irony of what was about to happen still strikes me, how God would completely revolutionize my understanding of that very subject. At 7:43 a.m., during mile 3 of my run, everything changed. A sudden, crushing pain seized my chest, radiating down my left arm. As a health-conscious person with no family history of heart problems, my last thought before collapsing was, this can't be happening. Later, I would learn that I had suffered a massive cardiac arrest, what doctors call a widowmaker heart attack. But what happened next was far more significant than my clinical death. The moment my heart stopped, I felt myself separating from my physical body. I watched from above as a young jogger found me and began CPR while calling 911. But then something extraordinary happened. I was pulled into what I can only describe as a dimension of pure light. The physical world fell away, and I found myself in what seemed like a vast expanse of living light, more real than anything I'd ever experienced on earth. That's when I saw him, Jesus Christ himself. His appearance shocked me, nothing like the paintings and images I'd grown up with. He appeared as a first-century Middle Eastern Jewish man, with features that reflected his historical and geographical context. His skin was olive-toned and weathered from the sun, his hair dark and cropped relatively short, so different from the European-looking Jesus with flowing brown hair that we so often see. But it wasn't his physical appearance that captivated me, it was his eyes. They held such wisdom, love, and to my surprise, sorrow. When he spoke, his voice resonated through my very being. Leslie, he said, I have brought you here because my church needs to know the truth. Satan has woven deceptions into Christian traditions over centuries, leading my people away from true worship and understanding. You must share what I'm about to show you. I felt overwhelmed by his presence and the weight of what he was saying. Lord, I said, I'm just a professor. Why me? His smile held both compassion and determination. Because you have the background to understand these truths and the position to share them. What you will see today will challenge everything you've taught, but remember, the truth will set my people free. Suddenly, we were in what I can only describe as a celestial library of time. Jesus explained that he would show me 6 specific traditions that Satan has used to distort Christian understanding and practice. Watch carefully, he said, for each distortion has a purpose in the enemy's plan to keep believers from the full truth. The first vision he showed me was of the Garden of Eden. I saw Satan, not as a cartoon devil with horns and a pitchfork, but as a beautiful, deceptive being, orchestrating a plan that would echo through millennia. Notice, Jesus said, how the enemy has focused humanity's attention on the type of fruit, creating the apple myth, rather than on the true issue of disobedience and trust. I watched the actual scene unfold, Eve reaching for a fruit that looked nothing like an apple. Jesus explained, the apple tradition comes from a simple Latin word confusion between malum evil and malus apple, but Satan has used this misconception to trivialize the profound nature of the first sin. By focusing on the apple, he diverts attention from the real issue, the choice to distrust and disobey God. He showed me how this seemingly innocent tradition has had far-reaching effects. When people focus on the apple, they miss the deeper spiritual lesson. The fruit's identity was never revealed because it wasn't important. The enemy knows that if he can get people to focus on insignificant details, they'll miss the powerful truth about trust, obedience, and the consequences of doubting God's word. What Jesus revealed next about the 3 wise men tradition would prove even more shocking, but I feel compelled to share every detail of what he showed me about how Satan has twisted these Christian traditions for his purposes. The scene before me shifted dramatically as Jesus guided me through the next revelation. "Watch how Satan has distorted the story of the Magi," he said, and what I saw next left me speechless. Instead of the familiar 3 kings on camels that we see in countless nativity scenes, I witnessed a larger group of scholarly men making their way toward Bethlehem. These were the Magi, Jesus explained, astronomers and scholars from the East, likely Persia or Babylon. Satan's deception here was subtle but powerful. He showed me how this tradition had been corrupted over time. Notice, my daughter, how the enemy twisted this story. The Bible never mentions 3 men, nor were they kings. These were learned men who studied the stars and ancient prophecies. By creating the myth of 3 kings named Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar, Satan accomplished several things. Jesus then revealed something that shook me to my core. The enemy knows that when people accept man-made traditions without questioning, they become less likely to search the scriptures for themselves. This pattern of accepting human traditions as biblical truth is one of his most effective tools. I watched as the actual scene unfolded, a larger group of Magi arriving at a house, not a stable, where Jesus was already a young child, not a newborn. "See how different this is from what tradition portrays," he said. "The timing, the location, even the number of visitors, all have been distorted." He showed me how this deception had far-reaching implications. When Satan convinced people to focus on the number 3, simply because there were 3 types of gifts, he created a distraction from the prophecies these gifts represented. The gold symbolized my kingship, the frankincense my deity, and the myrrh my future sacrifice. But how many of my children today understand these profound symbols? The scene shifted again, and Jesus' expression grew even more serious. Now, watch how the enemy corrupted the story of Mary Magdalene. What he showed me next was perhaps the most disturbing revelation yet. I saw Mary Magdalene as she truly was, not the prostitute of popular tradition, but a woman of standing from the town of Magdala. Jesus explained, Satan's corruption of her story was particularly malicious. By conflating 3 different women from Scripture, Mary Magdalene, the sinful woman who anointed my feet, and Mary of Bethany, he created a false narrative that has diminished the testimony of one of my most faithful followers. I watched scenes from Mary Magdalene's actual life unfold, her deliverance from 7 demons, not from prostitution, her faithful following of Jesus, her financial support of his ministry, and most importantly, her role as the first witness to the resurrection. "The enemy knows the power of a witness," Jesus said. By smearing Mary Magdalene's reputation with false accusations of prostitution, he attempted to discredit one of the most important testimonies of my resurrection. This was no accident. It was a calculated attempt to undermine the credibility of my resurrection story. The truth hit me hard. How many women throughout history had been affected by this false narrative? How had this distortion influenced the church's view of women in ministry? "But Lord," I asked, "why has this deception persisted for so long?" Jesus' response was profound. Satan knows that by distorting the stories of my faithful followers, he can discourage others from fully embracing their calling. Mary Magdalene's true story demonstrates how complete transformation comes through spiritual deliverance and devotion, not merely moral reform. The enemy would rather have people focus on a story of sexual sin than on the power of complete spiritual transformation. He showed me scenes of Mary Magdalene's actual ministry, her courage in staying at the cross when most had fled, her determination to honor his body with burial spices, and her joy at being the first to see him resurrected. "This woman," Jesus said, "whom I chose to be the first witness of my resurrection, has had her testimony tainted by Satan's lies for centuries." Then Jesus revealed something that made me gasp. He showed me how this distortion of Mary Magdalene's story had been deliberately perpetuated through history, used by the enemy to limit women's roles in the church and create false narratives about redemption. The enemy knows that when people believe Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, they miss the true power of her story, that I can deliver anyone from any form of spiritual bondage, not just moral failure. The scene shifted again, and Jesus' expression became even more intense. "Now," he said, "let me show you how Satan has used the tradition of December 25th to blur the lines between pagan worship and true celebration of my birth." What he showed me next about the true timing of his birth and Satan's role in establishing the December 25th tradition would shake everything I thought I knew about Christmas. But before he could continue, I felt a strange pulling sensation. "Your time grows short," Jesus said, But there is still more you must see about how the enemy has corrupted the understanding of my physical appearance and the true nature of angels. Remember everything I've shown you about these first 3 deceptions. They are just the beginning. The scene before me transformed once again, and Jesus began to reveal the truth about the December 25th tradition. What I saw next was absolutely shocking. "Watch carefully," Jesus said, "as I show you how Satan co-opted my birth celebration for his purposes." Before me unfolded scenes from ancient Rome. I saw pagan festivals, particularly the celebration of Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birth of the unconquered sun. "Notice," Jesus said, "how the enemy worked through the Roman Empire to blend pagan sun worship with my birth celebration." I watched as early church leaders, particularly around 350 AD under Pope Julius I, officially designated December 25th as Christmas. "The enemy's strategy was clever," Jesus explained. "Instead of fighting against the Christian faith directly, he influenced the church to compromise, to blend truth with pagan practices. The winter solstice celebration was deeply ingrained in Roman culture, and Satan used this to his advantage. He showed me the actual timing of his birth, and I was amazed. I saw shepherds in fields during a much warmer season, watching their flocks by night. My birth," Jesus said, "likely occurred during your autumn months, possibly during the Feast of Tabernacles." Think about it. Would shepherds be in the fields during the cold December nights? The biblical connection suddenly became clear. John 1-14's declaration that the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us took on new meaning. Jesus showed me how Satan had used the December 25th date to gradually disconnect the celebration of his birth from its rich Hebrew context and prophetic significance. "The enemy knows," Jesus continued, "that by placing my birth celebration on a pagan festival date, he could introduce elements of sun worship into Christian practice. This wasn't just about the date. It was about diluting the pure worship of God with pagan customs. I saw how this deception had far-reaching effects throughout history. The mixing of sacred truth with pagan practices became a pattern that would repeat itself many times in church history. This is why, Jesus explained, Paul warned about not conforming to the patterns of this world. Satan's strategy has always been to blur the lines between holy and profane. The scene shifted again, and Jesus addressed another massive deception, the false images of his physical appearance. What I saw next stunned me even further. "Look at how Satan has reconstructed my image," Jesus said, showing me the progression of artistic representations through history. I saw how his appearance had been systematically Europeanized, transformed from a first-century Middle Eastern Jewish man into something completely different. The enemy's strategy here was particularly devious, Jesus explained. By creating a false image of me that reflected European ideals of beauty and power, he accomplished several things at once. He disconnected me from my Jewish heritage, created a false sense of cultural superiority, and established a barrier between me and non-European peoples. I watched in amazement as Jesus showed me his true earthly appearance, so different from the familiar paintings and statues. He had been a typical first-century Jewish man from Palestine, with features that reflected his time and place. The only prophetic description of my appearance, he reminded me, is in Isaiah 53 verse 2. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. Satan knows, Jesus continued, that if he can make people focus on a false physical image of me, they might miss the true essence of who I am. This deception has caused some to worship an image rather than the true God, breaking the very first commandment. Then came the final revelation, about angels. What Jesus showed me about these celestial beings was perhaps the most startling of all. Observe how Satan has transformed the understanding of angels from powerful, often fearsome warriors and messengers into diminutive, romantic figures, Jesus said. Before me appeared angels as they truly are magnificent, sometimes terrifying beings that bore little resemblance to the cute cherubs of popular art. The enemy's strategy here was to diminish the understanding of spiritual warfare, Jesus explained. By turning angels into harmless decorative figures with wings and halos, he has hidden their true nature as powerful spiritual beings engaged in cosmic warfare. I saw the true cherubim and seraphim, the cherubim with their 2 wings, nothing like the cute baby angels we often see, and the seraphim with their 6 wings, using 2 to cover their faces, 2 to cover their feet, and 2 to fly. The contrast with popular depictions was startling. Remember, Jesus said, when angels appeared to humans in Scripture, The first thing they often had to say was, "Fear not." These weren't cute winged babies. They were powerful warriors and messengers of the Most High God. Satan has worked to hide this truth, trying to blind my people to the reality of spiritual warfare. He showed me how this deception had practical consequences, how it had led many Christians to underestimate the seriousness of spiritual warfare and the importance of angelic ministry in God's kingdom. The enemy knows, Jesus said, that if he can get people to view angels as mere decorative figures, they won't understand the power and authority available to them through my name in spiritual warfare. As these revelations concluded, I felt that same pulling sensation growing stronger. But before I returned, Jesus gave me final instructions that I'll never forget. "Leslie," he said, "you must share these truths. The enemy has woven these deceptions so skillfully that many of my children have accepted them without question. But now is the time for the truth to be revealed." "But Lord," I asked, "won't people resist these revelations? These traditions are so deeply ingrained." "Some will resist," he replied, "but many are hungry for truth. Remember, it's not about condemning those who have followed these traditions. They simply didn't know. It's about lovingly leading them to the truth." The enemy has used these deceptions to create divisions, to disconnect people from their spiritual heritage, and to weaken their understanding of spiritual warfare. But the truth will set them free. Suddenly, I felt myself being pulled back. The last thing I heard Jesus say was, "Remember, these deceptions may seem harmless, but they have diverted many from true worship and understanding. Share what you've seen with love, but without compromise." The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air as paramedics worked over me. My husband James was there, tears streaming down his face. I later learned that I had been clinically dead for 7 minutes, 7 minutes that changed everything I thought I knew about Christian traditions. The medical team told me I had experienced a miracle. The type of cardiac arrest I had typically has a survival rate of less than 10% outside of a hospital, and those who do survive often have neurological damage. But I came back with perfect clarity and a mission from Jesus himself. But it didn't stop there. 2 years after my first near-death experience, on November 15, 2018, I found myself back in that familiar realm of pure light. This time, it wasn't due to a heart attack. I had a severe allergic reaction to medication during a routine medical procedure. Once again, I left my physical body behind, but this time, I felt no fear, only a deep sense of coming home. Jesus was waiting for me, his presence just as powerful as I remembered. His smile held both warmth and knowing. "Leslie," he said, "you've been faithful with what I showed you. Now I want to show you the impact of sharing these truths." Suddenly, we were moving through what seemed like streams of time and space. "Watch," he said, "and see how the truth has begun to set my people free." Before us appeared scenes from the past 2 years, moments I recognized and some I didn't. I saw myself in my hospital bed, frantically writing down everything he had shown me during our first encounter. "You see," he said, "even in your weakness, I strengthened you to document these revelations accurately." Then I witnessed scenes of my family's reaction when I first shared these truths. I saw my husband James's initial skepticism transform into understanding, my colleagues' surprised expressions turning to recognition of truth, and my students awakening to deeper biblical understanding. "Lord," I said, "some people still doubt. Some say I'm just making this up." His response was gentle but firm. "Remember Peter's words. We did not follow cleverly devised stories. You're sharing what you've seen and heard, just as my disciples did. Look at the fruit." He showed me ripples of impact I hadn't known about. Pastors re-examining their teachings, scholars discovering historical confirmations, ordinary believers finding freedom from religious bondage. I saw people in different countries reading translations of my testimony, their eyes being opened to truth. "But look deeper," Jesus said. "See what the enemy tried to prevent by maintaining these deceptions." Then I understood. Each tradition he had exposed wasn't just a simple misconception. I saw how the apple myth had trivialized the serious nature of sin and disobedience. The Three Kings tradition had created a fairy tale version of my birth that distracted from its prophetic significance. The false story of Mary Magdalene had wounded countless women and limited their ministry. The December 25th tradition had opened doors for pagan influences in worship. The European image of Jesus had created cultural barriers to faith. The cute angel imagery had blinded people to the reality of spiritual warfare. Your obedience in sharing these truths, Jesus said, has begun breaking down these barriers. But there is still more work to be done. He then showed me something that brought me to tears, an elderly pastor, one I recognized from a conference where I had spoken, sharing these revelations with his congregation. For 50 years, he was saying, I preached traditions without questioning them. But now I understand, we must return to biblical truth. This is why these revelations matter, Jesus explained. Each person freed from these deceptions returns to a purer faith, a deeper understanding, and a more authentic relationship with me. Then Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. You've asked yourself many times if exposing these traditions really matters. Now you see, the enemy's deceptions were carefully crafted to create barriers between my people and the fullness of truth. But one by one, these barriers are falling. What should I do next, Lord? I asked. Continue sharing what you've seen, he replied. Some will resist. The enemy's deceptions are deeply rooted, but many are hungry for the truth. Remember, you're not condemning those who followed these traditions, you're helping them find freedom in truth. I felt the familiar pulling sensation beginning. One last thing, Jesus said. Tell them that I love my church too much to leave them in deception. These revelations come not to condemn, but to restore. The time has come for my people to worship in spirit and in truth. When I returned to my body this time, I found myself even more determined to share these truths. This second experience had confirmed everything from my first encounter and shown me the importance of continuing to expose these deceptions. The medical records once again documented my clinical death, 3 minutes this time. But the timing was perfect. It was exactly what I needed to see the fruit of sharing these revelations and to receive confirmation about their importance. To everyone watching this testimony, yes, these traditions may seem harmless on the surface. But as Jesus showed me in both encounters, they're not harmless at all. They're carefully crafted deceptions that have dulled our spiritual understanding and created barriers to authentic faith. Examine these things for yourself. Study the scriptures. Research history. But most importantly, pray for the Holy Spirit to guide you into all truth. Just as Jesus told me, he loves his church too much to leave us in deception. The question is, are we willing to embrace the truth when he reveals it?